All right, hello YouTube. On the main channel, the main KarQ channel, I covered the patch notes and showed a lot of the comparisons, but I didn't really have time in that video to give like personal thoughts on what this patch entails and the implications it has, because that channel's, I display the before and after and move on to get it done as efficiently as I can, but this is the Yap channel, live at twitch.tv, where people just like to spam the Yap emote, evidently. So here, I'm gonna go over the patch notes again, but kind of give a bit more thoughts to this. And I will say, on paper, initially, kind of looks like shit, but I haven't played it yet. I'll report back in the comment section like 12 hours later or the day after to tell you what I think about it after I give it some honest time. Obviously, Overwatch Transformers collab, actually good, okay? Skins from this collab, the little quick animation they had, we can give them props for that. That shit looks awesome. Optimus Prime, just kidding, it's Megatron. Just wanted to test you guys. Little figure here. Summer Games 2024, don't really care. I've been playing Summer Games for the past like 8 years. I don't really care about this. Mythic Weapon Rhine, I mean, it's going to be in the shop July 23rd, but we saw a little teaser in the trailer to see what it looks like. I don't play Rhine, so it doesn't really affect me. We have the next update, player surveys. You get a little QR code at the end of it. I mean, do it if you want. I don't know if there's any incentives to do it, but like if it pops up, there you go. That's something they're just letting you know that may happen. Audio update. So this is in the patch video, the main patch video, but when you shoot enemies with base health, that's the white health, shield health, armor, or over health, they'll have different sound cues to indicate what type of health you are damaging. That's pretty nice. Shield is a small little typo there. That's okay. All right, now let's actually get into the meat and potatoes of this stuff. So armor flat damage reduction is going to be increased from 5 to 10 per projectile. If I do 120 damage for Farah on a rocket, instead of it doing 115 on armor, it'll do 110. Things with large instances of damage still is not that effective. It's still like old armor, when it used to be minus 30%, was still better against like, you know, burst damage. So not too much changes there. However, the heroes that have the damage threshold between 10 to 20 damage, like where each instance of damage is around that range, gets nerfed heavily. So that would include like Roadhog, Baptiste, Lucio, Sojourn, Orisa Primary Fire. All those heroes get affected way more by this. Now, luckily, Cactus Puppy has a spreadsheet, which we'll also link in the description, to show who the biggest winners and losers are on this patch. This is a 2-page area here with graphs that show the comparison between pre and post mid-season 11 patch. The biggest takeaway here, who sucks and who's good, you can get it highlighted in deeper red here. This is the public link. This is okay. I can show the link for this one. You guys can actually look at this one. So the biggest losers are like Orisa's Javelin Spin continued hits. It's like 33% less because it would previously deal 20 per tick of it. And then -5 armor would used to give it 15 on the last patch. Now it's 10. So effectively 33% less when compared to last patch, right? But like, this is pretty marginal because it's a small cooldown. But the bigger takeaway stuff is probably stuff like Queen's Scattergun, Diva's Booster. Okay, that's pretty minor. Let's look at stuff that actually has like a lot more pellets. So Scrap Gun for Roadhog is a big one. Big nerf. Ash's Bob actually does a lot less damage. Bastion's Shot from 25 goes down to 15 now. Bastion's Shot gets nerfed a lot. Bob gets nerfed a lot. Who cares about Tactical Grenading? Echo's Primary Fire nerfed by a lot here. 17 raw. Now it's at 8.5. Echo's Sticky Explosions. Actually, that's pretty significant. Genji by a lot, because Genji would be, what, 27 base? Now it's 17 because of the -10. So Genji gets nerfed by 22%. That's a big thing because his entire shtick is like poking with the shurikens. Sojourn's Primary Fire when headshotting, because Primary Fire base is 9, but it's 18 if you headshot. And the headshots now get reduced by 10, right? So 30% effectively. That's pretty bad. Soldier 76 is a big loser on this as well. 32% down on average, you know, heavy pulse rifle. That's the main weapon. Sombra when shooting the head specifically. The virus impact damage is whatever. The shotgun pellets for Torb's Rivet Gun. Yeah, you know, when you get up close to like an armored tank, that's a pretty significant nerf, 16%. Venture's Clobber is pretty whatever. That's just a minor part. Who's SMGing on Widow? Let's skip that. Baptiste. 25 damage per pellet, now only does 15 per bullet. That's a very significant nerf for Baptiste. And Lucio, from 18 damage per green Oreo down to 9. 30% nerf. Who cares about Mercy's Barbie Blaster? So yeah, biggest L's seem like Roadhog, Genji, Bastion, Echo, Baptiste, Lucio. soldier. The maximum reduction is still 50% as long as the instance of damage is under 20. But here it is presented quite nicely for you to peruse if you're into the actual, you know, stuff like this. Basically, if your raw damage is below 20, it's 33% nerf here at most relative to armor, and then it like scales downward. So that's why if your instance of damage is like 120, like I said, like with Farah, it's like a 4% nerf in damage versus where it's really spiking at around 20, and then it scales downward because it's all halved here anyways. That's how this graph works. Just have to show you that, and then we'll move on. Enemy health bars now display when they're at a low health threshold. So what I understand from this part is, you know, when you shoot an enemy and then they don't get shot for a while, their health bar disappears. You can actually only see an enemy's HP if they've been shot in the last like 5 seconds. So if they're sitting at low health threshold, which to me indicates less than 25% health, that means their HP bar will always be displayed if you're looking at them. So that's a small quality of life buff for attack of people like looking at a low health person, but a nerf for non. All right, now on to the tanks. The big talk of this patch is what the hell is going on with tank, because every single tank as we go down is buffed. And my thoughts on this are, I don't think this is the right direction. They should be going for tanks. The devs have heard a lot of people complain about tank and how it's not fun. And their initial solution here is to literally throw shit at the wall and just buff all of them to make it more fun, which can maybe work for like a week for tank players specifically, because now they feel like amazing because now they're going to be super strong. But that's going to make the other 2/3 of the player base who don't play tank way more miserable, because now the tanks are actually just way too strong. Now, even that being said, a lot of tank mates are also complaining about the frustrations of tank, and this doesn't solve it either. It could be fun for some, but some other tanks will be, players will be like, this doesn't actually solve the frustration issue, because there's more incentive to counterplay, counter swap, and whatnot because they're so powerful. So in the end, it doesn't really solve much by Giga buffing them. They have to attack this at a different angle. So that's why when I said on paper this patch is a little wild and I'm not sure if I'm gonna like it or not, this is why I have very big concerns. First thing they're gonna do is reduce ult generation from 30% to 40%. So if you shoot a tank, you won't even build your ultimate as quickly because there is a passive reduction. This is friendly as well though. If you're pocketing a friendly tank as an Ana, for example, you will not build your ultimate charge as fast when you heal them. So it kind of goes both ways. Knockback resistance being nerfed from 50 to 40%. Okay, that's nicer, I guess. So like Lucio Boops feel like they can do something. That's fine. Next, Diva. So they're increasing Matrix from 3 to 3.5 seconds. That is pretty significant. What's the percentage change relative to that? That's like, is that a 20% increase? I can't do fast math. Is it 3 divided by 3.5? That's long, because the regeneration is still going to be the same. It won't take any longer to regenerate that extra 3.5. It's 16% stronger. And micro missile is going from 4 to 5.5 damage, so the total burst goes from 126 to 153. That's like a 25% increase in micro missile damage, raw damage. Diva sounds pretty good on paper because they just buffed Diva beginning of season 11. I'd argue Diva seems pretty strong this patch for that reason. This seems extremely good. 3.5 seconds for Matrix. Diva wins a lot here. Doomfist, best defense is his passive. You gain 40 overhealth instead of 35 per target. Most people hit like 2 or sometimes hit 2, 3 targets. Never really 5 targets, but let's say 2 to 3 targets per. If you drop your ultimate on somebody, you'll gain a lot of extra overhealth, and it doesn't even decay as fast now from 1 to 3 seconds. Pretty good for Doomfist durability. I wouldn't say it's like a major mover in terms of Doom strength. I think Diva's feels more significant than this, but it's helpful for Doom. Junker Queen, overhealth increased from 150 to 175 when shouting. Small buff. This one's a bigger buff though. Adrenaline Rush. Wound damage self-healing multiplier increased from 2 to 2.5x. This is a major buff. That's a 25% increase, right? To the self-healing multiplier. And remember, if you kill somebody that has a wound applied to them, you get the rest of the healing instantly. So it's just a lot more raw healing from Adrenaline Rush, which has more like uptime than like your one commanding shout cooldown. This is a pretty big buff, I would say. Yes, that's been a change for a while. That's good. This one, Doom is okay. Very good for Diva. Malga. Now this one's interesting. It seems like they're really trying to bring the direction of Malga to kind of be an all or nothing rather than a sustained buff. So they're making Overrun do a bit more damage. If you bump into them with Overrun, 25 to 30 damage, that's pretty marginal. The stomp damage is a pretty significant change here because 60 to 75 when you stomp them gets multiplied by 2 if you actually stomp into them and crit them. Because if you step on them, you used to deal 120, now you deal 150. That's a bigger shift. That's like another, what, 25% increase? Pretty good if you can step on them. Cardiac Overdrive. Now this one's big because the duration is getting cut by a lot. 5 to 3 seconds. I saw this clip on Twitter, people going crazy because obviously the lifesteal is going from 60 to 100. That is very strong, along with damage reduction going from 30 to 40. But the duration is being cut by like 40%. But obviously the lifesteal is going up by a lot as well. So he's gonna be a lot stronger. If he jumps into you and pops cardiac, he can go haha and heal very, very quickly if there's someone to shoot. However, I think when you actually play this one out, this one's a bit easier to maneuver around because 3 seconds to kind of play around the cooldown, maybe hide at LOS, or like if he pops haha and you're playing like a Reinhardt, just keep your shield up for 3 seconds only, and the effect is like gone after 3 seconds. That's a big cut to the duration. So while it's stronger if it hits, I'm not sure how it will average out over time, but this one seems to be a bit more overreacted on Twitter, especially because like I see these clips of people doing the absolute extreme examples where Malga gets full control, LOS, pew-pewing against the nanoed Bastion who's trying to face tank the haha. You just have to respect this cooldown way more. You have to respect the cooldown. I think this is like a skill check though. I think for lower players who just don't even realize cardiac is active, they'll get punished very quickly if they allow it to lifesteal. But I can't say it's a net nerf or net buff yet until I play this out. The bigger thing though is allies only receive half the lifesteal and damage reduction, so it's less of a team oriented. Malga's a lot more solo, right? This kind of kills the not kills, but it crushes the value of all ending with Malga and your Venture and your Farah and your Genji all ending together, collectively getting the overdrive buff for 5 seconds. So you know what, when you look at it from a team play perspective, I think on the higher end this actually might be a nerf in that, you know, full team play capacity. Because like one of the reasons why Malga was so good in OWCS specifically was like the coordinated play when all their DPS go in for 5 seconds, everybody getting 60% lifesteal, 30% damage reduction. Now your team only gets 50% lifesteal and 20% damage reduction, which is a nerf even with these buff numbers when it's received in half, and the duration is cut by like 40%. So for example, like a D.Va could hold the Matrix for the entire cardiac duration now. So Malga's kind of like in the middle for me, whether like this is like a big shift. I was just, these are just straight up buffs for D.Va. Like it's still a net buff for Malga, I think. Like still a buff for Malga because of all this other stuff, like all things considered, but not as extreme as the other ones. Orisa barely got touched, fortify from 3.5 to 4 seconds. That's like a nothing burger. I feel like Orisa's the biggest loser in this patch. Orisa is already not great, and Orisa's primary fire, the fusion cannons or whatever, gets affected by armor a little bit harder on this. So when you're spamming the other armored tank, I think you're doing less damage, if I'm not mistaken, according to the spreadsheet. We can reference that back later. So Orisa kind of sucks in that capacity, but there was an unmarked buff that people made a point of where Orisa's spear can now headshot. You have to think into the probability of you landing a spear. What's a good spear percentage? 50, 60%? And then what are the chances that you actually hit them against the wall or you actually hit it perfectly on their head? A lot lower on average. While that's a nice hidden unwritten buff here, I still think Orisa, like relative to everybody else's power creep, still not that good. Ramatra, this one is massive, by the way. 75 more armor for Ramatra, 225 to 300 means when he switches over to Nemesis form, he has like 825 HP. And he can block. Like Ramatra, low-key might be one of the bigger winners this patch for that reason. And his pummel damage goes from 60 to 65, which helps a lot with his kill potential because Ramatra was always 60 damage pummel. After season 9 hit, when everybody went from 200 to 250 HP, you know, when everybody was at 200 HP pre-season 9, Ramatra, you know, slowing them, punch, 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 melee, instant kill. But then everybody went to 250. Now he has the punch, 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 punch melee, kills a big portion of the burst damage. This doesn't change that because you don't have to add the melee at the end, but it does help in case they receive a lick of healing, that it can still be within kill potential with the melee a little bit. So this is nice. The tankiness is good. Ramatra, probably still like pretty good. Next, Reinhardt. Maximum health of the shield going from 1400 to 1600, and it regens faster. Okay, nice. Charge wall impact damage increased from 275 to 300. Doesn't this only affect some edge cases like a Reaper or like Mei, maybe Bastion? You're already able to kill most of the heroes with this anyways beforehand. So small buff here for a couple of extra matchups. Because, I mean, Mei is kind of annoying for Ryan, so if he does actually connect on the Mei, and for Torb as well, I guess, right? That helps in those very rare specific matchups where you run into that. The shield health is actually nice, and this can actually, like, one of the reasons why I think Ryan is going to, like, be okay against Malga in this case is, like, you really, like, save your shield for this cardiac for 3 seconds. I think you can tank 3 seconds of, like, Malga just unloading his guns with your shield, and then you actually might be able to, like, maneuver around this matchup a lot more as Reinhardt, I will say. It doesn't solve like the thing with Rein where people, a lot of the Rein players, I think, are you guys a Rein player? Any Rein players in the chat? Want like movement speed with the shield going down or something, kind of like what they did in Mirror Watch or some iteration of that. So maybe they should lean more into that rather than just adding raw HP raw HP to his shield for now, but I feel like can't really say like no to just a free buff for Ryan. Pigpen, this hasn't really changed too much for Roadhog. Actually, Roadhog took a fat L this patch, even though Pigpen is a little better. Like, who cares about this DPS? Probably because the armor as well, you know, affects Roadhog's pellet damage by quite a bit. So I feel like Roadhog is a meh. Sigma's Rock increases from 40 to 80. That's the impact damage. Technically, it went from 80 to 120 total damage, which means the follow-up 55-55 will help kill 200 HP heroes. It's still not enough to kill a 250 HP hero, but, you know, it's a small buff. Sigma's already a very good hero, so I guess he didn't need too much. Winston's already very good. Indirectly even better now, simply because he ignores armor already with his Tesla cannon. Ignores armor regardless. And now the Tesla cannon, the secondary fire, you can actually like zap them a lot quicker. To charge up to full charge for 50 damage, it's a lot quicker. Makes him poke, it makes like the neutral where he can't hard engage it a lot better, because he could just sit there and just poke for a long time until he finds an opportunity to jump in, which increases, you know, that capability. Maybe builds Primal a little quicker. And then if he pops Primal, he goes from 500 to 700 HP gained. Plus his base health, what does that put him at? 1300 something? The Winston melee, it does change the Sigma combo. Oh, with melee. Oh, sorry, with the Sigma. Oh, sorry, you're right. With the Sigma thing, if you add the melee at the end and you rock them up close, it does actually allow you to kill. 120 plus 110, 55-55 on the double sphere into a melee if you rock them up close. So yes, this actually does increase the T. Oh, actually, I take it back. You're right. That is a very big buff that you guys called out for Sigma if you do catch a 250 HP hero in your face, which can happen more often than you think. All right, big Sigma buff there. Back to Primal Rage. This looks like a lot, but yeah, a lot of Winstons do get bursted pretty fast. So all in all though, Winston's just indirectly benefiting from armor. Like I said, he was already a well-performing tank. So I think Winston's a great pick this patch. Sigma's still good. Ryan's okay. Ram, as long as he's not bugged, seems okay. Malga, okay. Queen, okay. Meh for Doom. Okay for Diva. Wrecking Ball. Automatic reload time when transformed reduced from 2 to 1.6 seconds. Quality, that's pretty good actually. You unload all your clips, you roll back into ball form, you get your full reload a little quicker. That's nice. Allied overhealth transfer ratio increased by 50%. So if you use up to 50 overhealth per target, now it gives the ally 75 because it's 50% more. I think by default you transfer like, let's say if you transfer 75 HP, 112.5, so-and-so. This is nice if you're the team play ball. A lot of the pro players showed at OWCS that they actually do use this adaptive shield pretty often. Give it to like a tracer to all in into the back. Actually has some decent implications, and it incentivizes ball to use this a bit more. This is probably just to keep up with all the other buffs. And then finally for Zarya, actually low-key, I think Zarya might be the biggest win on this patch, because the bubble health is increased from 200 to 225, and the duration goes from 2 to 2.5 for both self and teammate bubble. So having your bubble tank a bit more damage means you can get more energy. It means total energy for Zarya gain is increased. So I think you can gain 45, and instead of 40 energy, you can gain 45 energy per bubble, go up to 90 very quick. And having the duration go up by half a second, especially if you back-to-back bubble, that's 5 seconds extra time for you to get energy. So it works three ways, right? 1, you get more energy. 2, your bubble duration lasts longer. And 3, that means there's more opportunities to catch stray bullets, which means you indirectly will probably be at a higher average energy thanks to the longer duration, and there's a longer time to wait. This is actually a very big buff to Zarya, because this is how she was in like season 1 or season 2 of Overwatch 2, where it was Zarya watch because the Zarya bubbles were so long. This is very good. I think Zarya, so all in all, amongst all these tank buffs, Zarya good, Winston good, Sigma good, Ram if not bugged good, Queen good, Diva good. Like biggest winners. Biggest loser by far Orisa, Roadhog. The rest seem okay. Depends on like player comfort, like Doom, Ball, Rein, etc, etc. Now, more buffs for tanks is basically like they're nerfing damage roll passive against tanks specifically, where it's instead of 20% healing reduction, it's 10% healing reduction for tanks. Okay, so now tanks are not only just raw buffed across the board, DPS passive works less effectively against them. More buffs for tanks. Bob now gains the tank roll passive ability. That's an interesting idea that they cooked with this. I mean, it's whatever. Bob's damage sucks against armor on this patch after they changed it. So to compensate, Bob is harder to boop because he'll have knockback resistance because he's tank roll passive. And headshot multiplier, right? It's 25% less headshot damage on tanks. That means Bob doesn't go down as fast. When everyone says burn the Bob or focus the Bob, you can't shoot it as long. And sleeping Bob, that's right. If you sleep Bob, he doesn't last as long. If we scroll down here, duration of sleep dart on tanks is going to be decreased from 3.5 to 3 seconds. So Bob, if you do decide to sleep it, will not sleep as long. But Bob is still easy to kill regardless. So, I mean, this is a whatever buff to me. Cassidy nerf. Primary fire fall off range. They say rescale, but it's nerfed. Nerf from 25 to 35 meters to 20 to 30 meters. For those who don't understand fall off damage, basically this is a nerf because your weapon does less damage the further away a target is. If a target is at 20 meters away from you, you're doing full damage. But once they go to 25 meters, it starts scaling downwards, and then 35 meters and onwards, you do your half the damage. So that means it kicks in at a closer range. So the effective range of Cassidy is worse now. At 20 meters, that's when the damage starts scaling down. And 30 meters and beyond, you're doing your minimum damage, minimum fall off. So that is not good for Cass. That's a pretty big nerf, but I still think Cass is okay. Because they say the gameplay goal for Cass is to be sturdier, close range hit scan. And that's the identity they want to lean in with the close range flashbang, be a close range dueler, which is okay. The Farah problem is something, you know, not related to Cass in that way. Cassidy, last patch and this patch, was never really a Farah counter because Farah almost always played 35 meters beyond your maximum range anyways. So like you weren't doing much to her because you were always shooting like a wet water gun with the scaling. So it doesn't really affect Farah. So you have to nerf Farah as like a separate entity and not really make Cass like an all-in hero where you can just cover all your bases, where you are a counter to the flyers and counter to all the close range people. So I think this is like a fine nerf for Cass as a standalone. Now the next thing is you have to tackle Farah, because if Farah isn't as good anymore, then like this is whatever. You keep the identity of Cass to be a close range. I'm actually okay with that. So now with Farah, the only nerf they're giving her is the explosion damage being reduced from 30 to 0. Explosion, it still has 30 explosion damage because it used to be 60 explosion damage because there's a direct and an explosion component to concussive blast. So this is kind of a slap on the wrist because they added 2 more compensatory buffs. So if you hit a direct on Farah, it still does 30, but if you do hit the, you know, the thing on the, if you hit the ground near them, it doesn't do at least 60 damage. It does 0 if you hit the ground now, but if you hit them directly, it does 30. Slight nerf there, but they allowed the radius of the knockback to be increased. So you have to just basically hit the ground anywhere near them and you can displace people very easily, and they get knocked back even more. I don't really understand Blizzard's idea of like, okay, if we nerf one, we should give power back in another way. Sometimes that works, but you don't have to do that every time. If there's a problematic hero, and you can want to nerf one thing, sure, but why does it feel necessary, like, okay, we lost power here, let's like give power elsewhere? You don't need to. Anyway, slap on the wrist. Farah's still very good this patch, especially because armor, again, armor is stronger against smaller pellets between that like damage threshold. Farah, or things with high burst, like, you know, Junkrat Farah or whatever, things that do high bulks and bursts of damage are like marginally affected based on percentages. So that's why Farah is still very good. And Cass, if it happens to be like, you know, Farah playing close range, can't do as much. Other hit scans are harder to play because why would you play Soldier when there's a lot of armored tanks right now? So Soldier can't, there's less soldiers to pressure the Farah. Cass, it's less pressure against the Farah because, you know, if she accidentally does play too close. Ashe might be okay against Farah. It gives people more reason to play like Illari and stuff to help deal with her. So slap on the wrist, Farah's still very good. Ana, slight nerf to the duration of tank hero on the sleep dart. I don't think they need to do this. This is like more like adding salt to the wound with all the tank buffs. Let's buff all the tanks, make the DPS passive half as effective against tanks, and also they can't be slept as long. Now, Sleep Dart is a frustrating CC to be hit on, but I feel like it's always been okay because it's a long cooldown, it's a skill shot. CC, a lot of tank players complain about CC, but it's like 3.5 seconds, and like there's a 99% chance you get woken up from it anyways, because you're a big hitbox, you get a stray. I don't think they need to do this, I'll be honest with you, but you know, they're just, why not? They're adding, just giving tank all the tools now. Illari, not really a patch change, just the UI, quality of life change. You don't see the destroyed UI if it breaks, that's whatever. Zenyatta, ultimate cost decreased by 10%. Zen is, for me, one of the more niche support heroes right now, so like decreasing the cost of it, okay, it's okay. And Zen does get affected by the armor changes a little bit because his instance of damage is around like 48 or something. And if you know, armor used to be -5, now it's -10. Slight power bump in terms of getting your Transcendence a little bit more often, sure, but I still think he's a bit more niche. That's it for this patch. They basically, again, are just putting all the eggs in the tank basket here to see if they can cook and see if they have fun. And I mean, Aaron and Alec were not kidding on Twitter when they said they're swinging for the fences on this patch. Some very drastic changes. They weren't kidding, but they said they'll be quick to respond, hopefully, if there are some really crazy outliers, and I hope they respond pretty soon. Maybe another in-between patch in the next few days once some of the stats come in after today and tomorrow on which outlier tanks there are with some of these buffs.